Okay, B'Shana Tova, we are starting siman lamidvav, which is the big siman of the letters, which terrifies everybody. Which letters are, what's the proper writing of a letter, what the changes, hassles, the Sefer Torah, Tefillin, Mezuzot, etc. Oh, you have your guide. Okay, very good. So what we'll do today, we'll do first seif Aleph and Gimel, Aleph Bet Gimel. Hopefully, we'll try to finish those. And then afterwards, the Mishnah Berurah gets into his famous Mishnat HaSofrim, where he goes letter by letter. Okay, so let's see what's going on here. It's very interesting. We'll see how we'll do it when we get to the letters themselves. But in the tour, he tries to bring all kinds of sources from Chazal to prove what exactly the shapes of the letters are. Okay, we'll see that's important because really what's ma'akiv is things that are derived from the Gemara. Okay. See the halacha here. Says the Mechaber Sif Aleph, צריך לדקדק בכתיבת האותיות שלא תשתנה צורת שום אחת מהן, that the shape of the letter should not change, ולא תדמה לאחרת, and one letter should not appear like another letter. הגה הוא לכתחילה יכתוב בכתיבת המה כמבואר בטור ובשאר פוסקים, הוא ידוע אצל הסופרים, יהיו אם שינה בצורת הכתב ואינו פסול. In other words, the Ramaj, the Chatchila, you should write it like the proper way as explained in the Torah and the Poskim. However, if you changed, it doesn't pass. Okay, so not so clear what's going on here. So let's see the Mishnah Berurah. So the Mishnah Berurah says, first of all these things he says in Sif Katan Aleph, he says, in other words, even if it was written properly originally, and then something will happen to change the shape of the letter, that can also pass the letter. Okay. Now, he says here in Sif Katan Det, אפילו אם שינוי הצורה היה רק במקצת האות, כגון שחסר הראש של האלף או הקוץ של יוד, או שנגעו יוד האלף בגג האלף וכדומה, ואפילו אם התינוק יקראו לאות לא נהני, כיוון שאנו יודעים שאין צורתה עליה קרוי. Okay, so what he's going to explain throughout this siman, I think we already mentioned this in the past, that there are two possible ways a letter could be pasul. One is if you've changed from the shape of the letter, even though somebody would still read it as a letter. For example, the example that he gives you regarding an aleph, this is even if somebody still reads it as an aleph, since you changed from the tzura of the aleph as Chazal taught us, that passes. Another way that it could pasul is if the letter appears like another letter. Okay? In other words, it's not so clear that it necessarily changed the letter, but rather it depends. Does it look like another letter or does it not look like another letter? Now for that, that's when I bring in the Tino. The Tino can tell me, am I still reading it like the letter or not? But if I've changed the tzura of the letter, even if a Tino still reads it properly, it doesn't help because I have the wrong tzura. Okay, so for the example that he gives here, שחסר הראש של האלף או קוץ היוד. Okay, so I took some pictures from a Mishnah Berurah with pictures as to what this means. Okay, so he says חסר ראש של האלף. So you see the aleph here should have like a yud. If the yud is chopped off, like in this picture, so even though you still read it as an aleph, and nevertheless it's not the tzura of the aleph. Okay, because we'll see that's in Chazal the yud on the aleph, or here as well. Chaser kutzo shel yud. According to Rashi, he brings here two explanations, bet and gimel. Rashi kutzo yud is the bottom part of the yud, and according to Rabbeinu Tam, the kutzo shel yud is on the left side of the yud on the bottom. In other words, the middle one here you hear is a proper yud, and the left one is without the kutzo shel yud. So again, even though a tinuk would probably read this one correctly as a yud, nevertheless, since it doesn't have the tzura of the yud, as Chazal stated that it needs the kutzo shel yud, then it becomes pasul. Sif Katan Gimel, he speaks about a strange case. He says, ראיתי בספר מעשה רוקח, שהביא לדין בשם תשובת מהר"נ, שכתב אפילו אם רק מקצת האות נדמה לאות אחר, פסול, ומדברי הגר"א לעיל לא משמע כן. In other words, what he's talking about here is a case where part of the letter looks like another letter, but when I look at the letter in entirety, it doesn't look like another letter. How is this possible? For some reason in this book, I didn't provide a picture for this, but I saw others explain that let's say somebody made a kuf, and on the upper left side of the kuf, he went up a little bit. So if you look at the kuf, just that it's without the leg of the kuf, it will look like a lamed, right? You can imagine the kuf going up like this, and then if somebody did a little bit like that, then it will look like a lamed. When you look at it in entirety, because you see also the leg of the kuf, you realize it's a kuf, it's not a lamed. So that's the machloket here he brings between the Maranach and the Gra and the Pri Chadash. Again, I don't know, it's a bit strange. It seems like a bit of a chumrah. Why would you look at part of the letter? You should look at the entire letter. So to be a bit of a chumrah to be machmir on this one. Okay. Now we said we should write it b'chtivat hama. However, the Rama wrote im shina b'tzurat haktav eino pasul. What does he mean im shina b'tzurat haktav? So he says as follows: היינו שלא כתב תמונות האותיות המוזכרים בספרים, אבל תמונת האות מי הוא צריך, כמו שכתב המחבר שלא תשתנה. וכל שכן שלא ישנה הוא לאות אחר, כגון מדלת לרש או מבית לכף וכדומה. So he says one thing that you definitely cannot do is that it will cause it to appear like a different letter. So if your bet looks like a kaf, then that passes. So what does the Rama here mean when he says im shina b'tzurat haktav eino pasul? So here he explains, he says, והכוונה כמו שכתב הנודע ביהודה, זה דבר שאין לו שורש בגמרא, אין לפסול לאות בעבור זה. In other words, we'll see, there are many things regarding the letters that appear in the Gemara. So those are ma'akiv. But other things that we have regarding the letter, which we just have maybe some sort of tradition as to how the letter should be written, then if you change in that doesn't pass it. And haraya, that we have different, we know that we have different customs how to write the various letters. So all of that's not ma'akiv. What is ma'akiv is whatever has a source in the mouth.
Rav Evan, can I ask a quick question? Good question is, a friend of mine told me back in the days, he's a seif who said that basically, were you to use, all the newspapers in Israel used to be using a franc rule font, which is actually from Leipzig. The franc was a typesetter here in Leipzig. And
very nice font.
I'm sorry?
It's a very nice font. A lot of people still use it.
That's right. So the point is that theoretically speaking, were you to use it, ibedi eved, almost all the pieces are kosher. Were you to write the Sefer Torah with a franc rule font,
okay,
ibedi eved, you might have a kosher Sefer Torah. What do you think? Is it a little bit of exaggeration, or?
I don't know. I'm not Baki in franc rule, or we can go through when we go through the letters. If you want, we can compare them to the franc rule font. Let's see how far off they are or not. There is even a font now for stem.
Yeah, sure.
But again, you would have to check again what exactly will happen. That's what exactly we'll study. What exactly is ma'akiv and what is not. Then you can see whether the font has it. It is a nice font, that's true. Okay. It says here, so that's why he wrote Mishnat HaSafim. Okay. In other words, so again, just to explain again, so just to sum up again, we have three kinds of changes that could be. One is a change from the Tzuva Ta'ot, regarding the parts of the Ot, the Tzuva, which we have a source in the Gemara, and that, if you make a change from that, that's Ma'akiv. And even if a Tinok reads it properly, it doesn't matter, it's considered the Shinu of the Tzuva Ta'ot, and it's Pasur. Then you have another type of Shinu where the letter appears like another letter, that also passes it. So if your Dalet appears like a Reish, a Tinok reads it like a Reish, it also passes it. And then we have a third type of Shinui, which is a Shinui from, the way things are traditionally written, but it's not exactly explicit against anything in Chazal. So in those cases, lechatchila, you should write it properly, but that's what the Rama here rules, that the Shinui is not Me'akiv, and it doesn't pass it if you're Mishane on one of those. Okay, seif bet. כל אות צריכה להיות גולם אחד. In other words, all the letters, they need to be made from one piece, without any breaks. It all has to be connected. Okay? לכן צריך להיות בנקודה שעל האלף שהיא כמין יוד, ובנקודה שתחתיה, וביוד הישין ועין ואחורי הצדיק, שיהיו נוגעות באות. In other words, again, in aleph we make like with a line slanted, and then the yud on top and the yud on the bottom, upside down yud on the bottom. They all must be connected, because again, all the letters need to be golem echad. And also the yudin on the sheen and the yud on the ayin, or the back yud of the tzaddik, all of that has to be touching. Even if in one place it doesn't touch, it's possible. Also all the letters the same thing. The two letters that are not one piece but are made from separate pieces are the hey and the kuf, and by them, if it's touching, it's pasul. In other words, again, even if the tinuk reads it properly, because it's a shinui of the tzura, and also in the parts where it's not connected, even if the tinuk reads it properly, since it's considered the shinui in the tzura, then it is me'akiv. Okay. So he says here, השין ועין בכל הראשים, ובאחת פירוש, אפילו ביוד אחת מן השין, והוא הדינים יש הפסק באמצעות. So you can see pictures of it here. Yeah, so here are the letters complete, Aleph, Shin, Ayin, Tzadik. And here you can see the Aleph, the Yud is not connected. You can see how this could easily happen. Or Shin, maybe one of these legs is not connected, or there's a break here, or here the Ayin with a Yud, or the Tzadik with a Yud. Again, even if it's just a little bit off, a little bit is missing, then it's possible. Although we will see in the Mishnah Berurah Kula regarding this. So he says here, even if it's not visible clearly, but when you look carefully, you can see it. I think we mentioned in the past, what happens if you can see it by a magnifying glass? I think we saw, I don't remember exactly, we saw some posts can say that. You don't have to worry about magnifying glasses. We go by what's visible to the naked eye. But if it is visible to the naked eye, even though not from afar, only when you look closely, then it's possible. Okay, ולא מהני כאן קריאת התינוק, כיוון שהוא ידוע האות ואין לטעות באחר, דווקא אם גריעו אותו מחמת שיש ספק לדמות או לא אחר, אז מועיל קריאת תינוק. So he says also a tinuk reading here doesn't help, because I see that it's not written properly. But here comes the kula. He says, בכל זה בלא תיקון. אבל ילדי תיקון מהני דלא להווה שלא כסדרן, אם התינוק ראו לאות וכדי להל בסימן עמד. Here's something we already mentioned. He says, what does the tinuk reading can help? It can help that you'll be able to correct it. Because l'chora, you'll tell me, let's say I wrote the aleph and the yudim of the aleph are not touching, right? So we say that aleph is possible. What do I need to do to correct it? I just need to add a little bit of ink, right? Just to connect it. It's very easy, okay? But you'll tell me, well, but I already wrote onwards. So if I go back and correct it, it's like I wrote Shelo Kesidran. So the Mishnah Berurah says, no, by Shelo Kesidran, we go by whether a tinok read it properly. So as long as it was readable, even though it was pasul, it's still considered that it was written Kesidran, because it was written in a way that it was read, it could be read and studied in order. Now you have a problem with one of the letters, which, technical problem, that the shape is not fully correct, even though that's ma'akiv, that you're allowed to fix. And it doesn't create a problem of Shelo Kesidran. He says, וכן בשאר האותיות, כגון הנקודה שלמטה בגימל, או נקודה שבפה, או הרגל שבתוך התף, אם לא נגעו באות או שיש הפסק באיזה אמצעות. Okay, so they also bring some pictures of this here as well. Here, the gimel, the leg here, this inner leg of the pei, taf, or the bet, any of these that are not connected, that is me'akiv. What about the hey and the kuf? The hey and the kuf, it's the opposite. They need to have a separation. How big of a separation? Says the Mishnah Berurah, לכתחילה יפסק בכדי שאדם בינוני יכירנו היטב מעל ספר תורה של גבי בימה שהוא קורא בו. In other words, לכתחילה, the space between the leg of the kuf and the hey to the top should be, so not that you need to really look closely to see it, but even a normal person standing above the bima reading from the Sefer Torah, that he'll be able to see it. Now, on the other hand, גם לא ירחיקו יותר מאבי הגג. In other words, also don't make it too far away. Okay, also he says here in Sif Katan Yudalef, Hu Adin Akuf B'Yericho Shebetzido. Even if the kuf is touching, sometimes this can happen when you make the leg of the kuf and you have the thing coming down, they might come and touch each other. Okay, so that touching is also possible. In other words, not only cannot touch on top, but also cannot touch on the side. Here you can see this is a proper shape. There's a space between the kuf on the top. Here the kuf is touching to the top, so that's a problem. And here the bottom part of the kuf is touching to the bottom part of the kuf. That also passes. Okay, it has to be completely detached, both on the top and on the side. Okay, everybody okay so far? Okay. Now in Sif Gimel, he gets into our topic of Tiyugim, making the Tagim. Okay. So here says the Mechaber, Tzarich letayeg sha'atnes gets, right? These are the letters that Chazal said need to have the Tagim on top of the crowns. Shin, Ayin, Tet, Nun, Zayin, Gimel, Tzadik. And when we say here the Ayin, the Tzadik and the Nun, it includes both a regular Nun and a regular Tzadik, and also a Nun Sofit and a Tzadik Sofit. Both of them need the Tagim. והסופרים נהגו לתייג אותיות אחרות. סופרים had customs of putting tagim on other letters as well. ואם לא תייג, אפילו שעטנז גץ לא פסל. But the tagim are not na'akev even on the שעטנז gets. Okay, what's he talking about here? The sofrim nahgu. So if you look on the tour, he actually brings this quite extensively. This here as follows. Okay, he brings here, you can see lists of all kinds of letters that the Sofrim had the minhag to put the gima. All kinds of dalid, chet, hey, varies a lot beyond the Shachniz gets. He says all of these are in additional to the Shachniz gets. He also quotes the Rambam here. The Rambam has another list of other letters which need to have tagim. Again, this is all in addition to the Shachniz gets. The end the tour says, כל האותיות המתויגות י' ו', אם לא עשה תגין, הוסיף וגרבן, לא פסל עד כאן לשונו. If you didn't make these tagim, or you added, or subtracted, some did, some not, did more than you should have, doesn't passel anything. הלקח טוב שיעשה כולם, כי אין פסול בשינוי ולא בתוספת גירעון. So he says it's good to make all these tagim which are mentioned in, the Shimush HaRabbah and the Rambam, all the sources that he quotes here. He says it's good to make all those tagim. Why? Because it doesn't passel. So why not do it? See what he says in the Mishnah Berurah on this. So the Mishnah Berurah explains as follows. There's, as we said, also Shachniz gets. Well, first of all, what are the tagim? He says, והתגים אלו הם 3 תגים קטנים ודקים, כחוט השערה וזקופות על אלו העליתיות, אחד מימין ואחד לשמאל ואחד מלמעלה, ויש אומרים לשלושתן מלמעלה וכן נוהגים. So the two customs he's referring to here are as follows. One is to do the tagim, one on the right end, left end in the middle, and the other one, which he says is actually the minhag, is to do just all 3 in the middle, going straight up on top, and also to make them like a little bit of a zayin, okay, so that they have like this wider part on the top of it, okay, as opposed to just having a straight line. Shachniz gets includes also Nun Sofit and Tzadik, normal Tzadik and a Tzadik Sofit and a regular Nun. It says they should be very thin, the tagim. Okay, now he says, ואם הוסיף הסופר לעשות תגין חוץ מהאותיות שעטנז גץ וחוץ מאלו המוזכרים בטור ובלבוש שנגעו בהם הסופרים, לא יקב אך בתנאי שיהיו מחוברים לאות. אבל אם אינו מחובר יש למוחקו. אפילו באותיות שבשם הקודש, ולכתחילה אם נכון להוסיף תגין מעצמו כל שאלה מוזכר בספרים. Or as if the sofer added more tagim, it doesn't pass him. However, better not to make up your own tagim, just follow what appears in the books. And also, the tagim should be touching the letter. If the tagim are not touching the letter, then you should erase them, he says. Okay, he says, ותיוג של שעטנז גץ הוא גם כן בשין על הראש השלישי של האות, ובעין, ובט' ובצדיק על הראש השמאלי, וידביקן בנשיאתו, לא בסופו. Okay, you can see the picture here. Here on the left side. And the sheen and the ayin, it's all on the left side. Tet as well. Tzadik as well on the left side. Also, he says here, when they're coming up, they shouldn't touch each other. גם צריך שיהיו התגים נוגעים בגוף האות ואליו הפסולים. ואף די ניקוב בעשיית התגים, כמו שכזב אומר, מכל מקום זה גרע, דאבי כי יתרון עוד קטנה בין השליטים. In other words, why must the tagim be touching the letter? And we said if they're not touching the letter, it's possible. If I wouldn't have a tag at all, it would be fine. So how is the fact that I have a tag which is not touching the letter making it worse? So he says if it's not touching the letter, it's like I added another letter. Okay? So that's why the tag has to be touching the letter. He says here, עיין בפרד אפרים שכתב דלא מהני אף אם ממשיכם אחר כך אל האות, רק צריך לגוררם ולכותבם מחדש. Not sure exactly why, it doesn't help to connect, unless he's sort of saying like, it originally wasn't written as a tag because it wasn't connected, so that passes it. Okay, רק אם ידינן שכתבן מוחת, עלינו שנפרד אחר שנכתב ומכשירים בהמשכה לאות. והלבוש ישרד כתב, דהרמה סבירה לי דלא גרע דבר זה מחסרון הקפת גיל, אינו מעכב רק ברירה. אבל כן, אם מפרד אחר שנכתב, כאשר בלא תיקון כלל, ומילא לדבריו, אם לא נוגעים מתחילת הכתיבה, מהני על כל פנים תיקון. Okay, this seems to be a little more sense. However, he says at the end, מכל מקום הנכון לכתחילה להחמיר כיד אפרים, in other words, not to fix it and connect it, but to completely erase the tag if it wasn't touching. According to the Rama, you can simply connect it. Like we said, if we know that it was written by a mumche, so then we assume that it was connected originally, and just a little, I guess, got erased, then also you are allowed to connect it. Okay. Now, what is it? Vasofrim nagul etayeg. So he says that's by tefillin. He says nagul etayeg betfillin otiyot achorot. מלבד האלו הם המוזכרים בטור, בשימוש הרב או שם הרב, right, all the tagim listed in the Rambam in the tour. והתגים האלה הם תוגים גדולים, אך שיהיו דקים שלא יתקלקל האות על ידי זה. Okay, he says very careful not to make the tagim too big so that they'll change the shape of the letter to appear like a different letter. Okay, and therefore he says you should be especially careful. בתגים שעל הוו או שעל היוד, יבקע להשתנה האות על ידי זה. Right, that could very much affect the letters. For example, you have the tagim not touching each other. Have the tagim touching the letter not separate, like we see in this picture. Here, you can see a vav and a yud with very small tagim, or a vav and yud with big tagim. The vav and yud with big tagim, it really affects the shape of the letter. It's not so clear that it's a vav or a yud anymore. That's why you should be careful generally, but specifically by these smaller letters like the vav and the yud, to make the tagim very small so they don't distort the letter. They don't distort the shape of the letter. And here we have a picture of the 4 parshiot of Tefillin with all the additional tagim that the Sofrim have the custom of making. You can see it goes beyond Shachniz Gitz. Half Shachniz Gitz, but also goes beyond it, adds other letters as well. Like here, for example, the Asafta, the Ganecha, there are tagim. The Pei of Letotafot, okay, various other letters here. The custom has been to make tagim, even though they're not in Shachniz Gitz. Here also, as Chalim, you see the Mem. Okay, various ones all across here. Okay, finally, the Mechaber rules here. The imlo tieg afilu shatnez gets lo pasal. So Mechaber rules the shatnez gets, even shatnez gets. Again, shatnez gets. There's a source for it in Chazal. That's there. The tagim are sort of considered more serious than the other ones. But he says, b'diavad even shatnez gets. Didn't do tagim. It doesn't pass it. Okay. Now here the Mishnah Berurah says as follows: V'abach posel b'zeh, v'gam agra b'vioro miyashvo leכל echad מהשיטות. מביא הרבה פוסקים ומחמירים בזה, על כן, מהנכון מאוד לחוש לזה ולתקנם אחר כך. So he says, because there are achronim that are possible, again, if we look in the Rishonim, there are actually three shitot here. One shita is like the Mechaber says, the shatnez gets is not me'akiv. Another shita says the tagim by shatnez gets are me'akiv. There's another shita that says that there is something me'akiv, but it's not exactly the tagim, but rather it's to make the letters on their top part straighter, not to have them too curvy. We'll soon see the Mishnah Berurah mentions it. Okay, so he says, but because of the shita that the tagim of shatnez are me'akiv, so he says, "Amken מהנכון מאוד לחוש לזה ולתקנם אחר כך. ותיקון מענה אפילו בתפילין ומזוזות ולא בזה שלא כסדרן, ובלא תגים נע מצורתה עליה." So if tagim are missing, he says you should be machmir to fix them. And again, you can fix them even by tefillin and mezuzot, and there is no problem here of shelo kesidran, because again, even without the tagim, it's read properly. We said by kesidran, we go by if it was readable correctly when you wrote it in the order. So here it was, it's just the tagim that are missing, so therefore I can go back and correct. Okay, he says, ודאוד שהמחבר מהירי שעשה ראש האות למעלה כי תיקונו אף שחשר התגים שעליו. אבל אם עשה למעלה ראשו עגול, גם כן משמע בית יוסף דין לקל אפילו בידה, לפי פירוש הרם. הרם, the Reb Eliezer Mimetz, he explains there that even though the tagim are not me'akiv, you need to make the top of the letter flat and not curved. So that is me'akiv. He says, וצריכים למעשה כי לכאורה לרמב"ם יש להקל בכל גב. according to the Rambam, there's nothing me'akiv here. The tagim, the curving on the top, none of that is me'akiv. So he says maybe lemaise you could be b'diavad, rely on the Rambam. Okay, that's regarding the tagim. After this, from here onwards, is the Mishnah Tosafrim and the Mishnah Berurah, where he brings various halachot, first of all of kisidran, chaktochot, etc., and then he goes letter by letter. So Zrat Hashem, we'll get into all of this after the Chagim, right? Because I think next week is Rosh Hashanah, and then the week following is Yom Kippur and Sukkot. So I think our next opportunity is after Sukkot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right, very good. Shkoich to everyone. I wish everyone a Shana Tova and a Ktiva v'Chatima Tova.